It's the 18th of December 2018, a Tuesday. This is the Recording Studio's AO28 preamplifier, and I'm going to start work on it. Now this that you see here was something that Alan Young put in. It's off of this resistor network, and also this little electrolytic capacitor is involved in it. I'm going to take that all out because it doesn't look like it functions as doing anything presently. He had tied a knot in this potted line cord to differentiate it from the other one, and that's because I think he's through a resistor. He's coming off to B+. If I remember right, I think this terminal right here should be B+, but once I get into it I'll know for sure, but my memory on all of the details on these things is not all that accurate. I'll be putting some terminal strips in. Here's a handy hole where the transformer used to sit, because Alan had to reposition the transformer to fit it into the Model A Hammond Model A cabinet. And then here's another screw that's actually holding the transformer. I could put a terminal strip there so that when I replace this electrolytic, I can reroute wires to lugs and put capacitors across. I'm not quite sure how I'll end up doing it, but it'll be something like that. And then this electrolytic's the same thing. I'll be replacing the sections. Let's see, there's 4 sections in that one. This one will get replaced, and everything else I'm going to leave, because these other ceramic tubed capacitors, these film capacitors, are really high end, and the other than the bad electrolytic on the percussion amplifier, the organ was playing absolutely fine. Plenty of tone and volume. So I'll be beginning on this. The next clip on this video will be when I got some parts taken out and some parts put in. We'll see how I get through this. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to test it here. I don't have a Hammond tone cabinet, but I think I can just test off the GG output, put an input on it, and make sure that I'm getting something through it, and before I reinstall it back into the console at the recording studio. So we're starting, I'm going to be starting with this AO28 for the recording studio. Once this is done, then I move on to the client's AO28 that came through kind of broken up. We'll put that all back together. It's December 26, 2018. I'm going to start working on the recording studio AO28 preamplifier. Here's something that I noticed that I didn't notice. You probably can't see it in the camera too well, but written on that, on the expression capacitor, it says reversed, and the date 11/5/1965. So apparently, in order for this to work, he had to do something inside to reverse how the capacitor works, because you can see with this linkage and such, I'm going to get that up around that tube, how this works in order to fit in that Model A cabinet. Now the final video on this one, I'm going to be installing it back in the console so you can see how tight that was put together. But the main thing is, before I start working on this, I wanted to point out that in the CE manufacturing company makes exact replacements for some of these multi-section electrolytic capacitors, and these are the 2 that go in here, plus the small one also goes in there, and then here are the 2 plus small capacitor for the other client's AO28, the one that's been kind of messed up in shipping, and and sort of messed up by another tech, but we're going to clean all that up. This will make it much easier. These are exact replacement electrolytics, and they'll fit very nicely on the chassis. So I'm going to get started with some of the wiring, and then when I get some stuff done, I'll make another clip. So at this stage, what I've done was I removed this additional components and circuitry that apparently did nothing, because the ends were taped off, and I could have drawn this into a schematic just to see what the intended purpose was, but frankly I don't have time. I just need to get this thing cleaned up, done, new capacitors put in, get it installed back in the console and operational. So this has been removed because it's useless. So the next step is I'll start rewiring this back to factory, and I'll put the new electrolytic cans in. I finished recapping the studio's A028 preamp. Here is the new can installed in the chassis. This one, of course, had to be installed like the other one was, because this is going in a Model A console, and if this is up on the chassis, it'll hit the generator, so that's why this is inside. But this is a new one, and then this little electrolytic here got replaced new. So the next thing I have to do is I have to see if I can rig this thing up to bench test it, make sure that the capacitors are good and nothing blows up. Well, this is not the best way to test it. I've got an input plugged in the RCA plug there, and that's not a very good way to test it, especially on this ultra modified preamp, but let's just play it. It sounds a little distorted, but I know the amp is good because, like I say, testing it through that input is not really the best way on this particular, and I probably have the input set wrong on this thing anyways. But the main thing is the amplifier's got new capacitors in it, and it is working. The final test, of course, is how it's going to perform inside the instrument. So the very next video I make, is going to be on the other A028 amplifier. I'm going to use this one as a template so I can rebuild that one properly. So that'll be the next video, probably the part 3 or the next part video that's coming up. I'm going to leave it go at this point.